Welcome everyone to another segment of the RetroGamer3 show where we're going to be talking about video games from the past or whatever video games in general. Today we're going to be talking about the Sega Genesis 3. No, I'm just joking. We already did that. We did Sega Genesis already. No, we're talking about the granddaddy of them all this time. This is the Super Nintendo, obviously. And today we will be discussing the Super Nintendo and my 5 greatest games that I ever played for this system of all time. Okay, the Super Nintendo debuted between 1990 and 93 in South America, Europe, Australia, and in Japan, and was known as the Super Famicom, which I just found out stands for Super Family Computer. And it did very, very well. Even though it's late start in the 16-bit era, it's stiff competition from, the Sega Genesis being out for so long. But I don't know. The planets were in line, the gods have spoken, and everything Nintendo did, they did right with this system. This, in my opinion, is the golden age for sure. The top of the mountain of the video game industry. And even to this day, after I've seen other systems come out next gen, they just didn't match what the Super Nintendo could do.
Only for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Super Nintendo.
On the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
Super Nintendo. Highlights of the system are it has a power switch. Very reliable. It's also one of the most reliable systems and well-built systems ever created. Reset switch, and the very first cartridge-based system I've seen that's got an eject button on it. I never really used it that often anyway. Dust flap. I know everybody remembers this story, so here's mine. I was practically living the movie The Wizard because we were going on a vacation to Reno and I was going to buy my own Super Nintendo for the very first time from the States because it was way cheaper. And I got an American-made Super Nintendo, so there was no French instruction manuals or no French on any of the box anywhere. And that was it. We stayed at Circus, and even though that's an amazing hotel casino for kids at the time, this was a long time ago, and it had like 5 arcades, massive 3-ring indoor circus, open 24/7, I was still in my room hooking up my Super Nintendo and mostly playing it through that whole vacation. Okay, highlights of the Super Nintendo controller. As you can see, it's way smoother than its original counterpart, and even lots of the things on the controller are very innovative and we still use in next generation consoles today, like the L and R buttons on top, the buttons on the front that are in a diamond pattern formation, and little things like they made the directional pad softer and smoother so that you didn't get thumb cramps so easily. And maybe another thing you might not know is there are 2 sets of buttons on the Super Nintendo controller. These 2 first right here, X and Y, are actually Nintendo buttons. And if you look at the A and B buttons, they're actually Game Boy buttons. So you have Nintendo and Game Boy buttons on the Super Nintendo controller. I just thought a great idea, and still I think it's one of the best controllers in the whole video game industry to this day. Okay, let's talk about some games. So, number 5 on our list is Contra 3 for sure. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's probably the best Contra that was ever made. You got the nukers, you got 2 weapons that you can equip at the same time, 2-player simultaneous action, killer music, killer graphics. They almost maxed the Super Nintendo out with this game right away. So you cannot go wrong. Okay, next on our list is number 4, and that spot is reserved for Mega Man X, because that is the first Mega Man that I played on the Super Nintendo, and it was a huge leap forward from the original Mega Man. And the music, even still to this day, I think is one of the best Mega Man soundtracks of almost any game that is out there. Okay, now we're getting into the legendary stuff. Number 3 on my list is Super Metroid. It's pretty much on everyone's list, I know, as just being like the god of all games, pretty much, and spawned other great ideas in the video game industry too, like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and everything is almost a copy of the maps and everything that they did. But the music, the graphics, the story, amazing. Super Metroid. Can't go wrong. Okay, and number 2 on our list, and I own it, is Castlevania 4. Unbelievable. Super Castlevania 4, excuse me. And everything about this game is super. We're talking about a jump from the 8-bit Castlevania to this. And the first time I saw this was in a video rental store, and it was being played behind the desk on a little TV by a couple of kids and the owner of the video store. And I was glued to the screen, like... No, you couldn't move me away from the screen. I had to have this game when I saw it. I didn't care. Murder, steal, whatever. I had to have this game, and it was unbelievable. And that's why it's on 2nd spot. Super Castlevania. Last, but not least, it was a tie. That's right, 2 games that take the number 1 spot. Because they were the 2 first games that I ever had for the system, and like I said, they were the only games that I was playing at the time, and I thought they were the ultimate combo. That's why I was only playing them together. And that is Super Mario World and Final Fantasy II. Both of them go together like Subway and bread, like Chinese food and soy sauce. I don't know, they just go together, and that's all I can say. You take one break from the epic story of Final Fantasy II and just, you know, start chugging along and jumping on Koopa Troopas or whatever in Mario World. It was great. And so they tie for number 1 place for my top 5 Super Nintendo games of all time. So that is the conclusion of my Super Nintendo video. Really hope you liked watching it. Maybe you got a little bit out of it. I don't know. Comment. I love reading all the comments down here. And tell me your top 3 or 5 Super Nintendo games. Only the ones that made a big impact on your life. Like, don't jump on the Zelda bandwagon or whatever. I know I excluded Zelda from the list, but it's only because Zelda's on everyone's list. I mean, it's like the golden god of the Super Nintendo. So, that's pretty much it. I'm RetroGamer3, and really appreciate you watching.
Mario! Mario!